Before we get into the video, did you know that we've got a Discord server where you can chat, hang out and even get support with any of your problems? We have support channels where we help you out with your code. We have resources to point you in the right direction of learning the basics of a programming language. You can even invite your own bot to Voltrax development and test your own bots. There are many bots for you to play with. Now let's get into the video. Hello YouTube and welcome to episode 2 of our web dashboard series. And in this episode we're going to be creating a very basic API in which we'll have a GET request which will get some basic information about a guild, and we'll have a POST request which will just change the name of a guild. So we want to start off by going into our config file to make an authorization key. So we're going to do export const authorization, which is a string, and let's just say secret password, but you can name that password whatever you want. Make sure secure though, so that no random person can make POST requests, because you don't want random people changing the name of a guild, which we'll see later on how it works. So moving on, we are now going to go into the source folder and create an API folder. Within the API folder we'll have an api.ts file, but we'll come back to that file and create a routers folder inside the API folder. Within the routers folder, I made a file there, my bad. We want a routers folder, but within that folder we will then want guildrouter.ts. So, using npm express in the terminal, we want to install express. And we also want to install calls using npm calls. And finally, npm app types /express. So express is what's going to be handling our API. So inside this file now, we want to import router, request, response and application from Express. We want to import a Cairo client from Discord Cairo. Import guild from discord.js. And finally we want to import our authorization key from our config file, like so. Now we're going to export default class, and this is going to be called guild router. And in here we're going to have some properties. Our first property is going to be app, which is going to be an Express application. We're going to have a client, which is going to be in a Cairo client. And we're going to have a router, which is going to be an Express router. Now we want to create our public constructor method, and within the parameters we're going to have an application and a Cairo client. And then we can do this.app equals app. So this.app is this protected app up here, and then this app is app from the parameters. Likewise with our client. And then this.router is just going to equal router as a function. Now what we want to do is do this.app.use this.router, and that will make sure it's using this router. So this is where we're going to create our API endpoints now, which is essentially going to be our URL. So this first URL is going to be localhost /v1/get/guild and then some guild ID. Then we can do this.router.get/v1/get/guild, and then we're going to have an ID variable, which is going to be our query parameters. So we're going to create a function here now which is going to be our request and response variables, which is an arrow function, like so. Now, we need to check whether the provided ID even exists. So we're going to use const guild, which is going to be a guild, and we'll use this .client.guilds.cache.get, and then we'll take the request.parameters.id. So the reason I'm using .id is because that's what I've named the variable up here. If I was to do guild, then I would change it to guild. So we'll keep it as ID. So if there's no guild, we want to return a response with the status 404, which is the status code for not found, and then we want to send a message saying guild not found. Otherwise, if it is found, we want to return the status code of 200 for OK, along with our response, which will have our guild name. We're going to have the owner, and then we'll have the guild.member count. Oh, whoops. Like so. And that's our GET request done. And now I'm going to show you how to make a POST request, which is going to change the name of a guild. This is Blazing Fast, a cheap and reliable hosting company. They provide many services to suit your needs, including web hosting, VPS hosting and dedicated servers. They offer a range of VPS servers to suit your bot's needs, starting with 512 MB of RAM up to 16 GB of RAM. You can easily set up your new VPS, and Blazing Fast offers a range of different operating systems. If you're looking for Windows, you will need a 1 GB VPS and above. Perhaps €5 is too much for you. No problem, you can use our code Voltrex to knock 25% off the price, dropping it to only €3.75 a month. Blazing Fast stand out due to their incredible 980 gigabit per second firewall, preventing all kinds of online attacks. Do not expect your service to go offline anytime soon. And if you're in doubt, just look at all these happy customers. So in this case, the URL would be localhost on port 8888 v1/post/guild-name, and then some guild ID. This.router.post v1/post/guild-name, and then again we'll do ID. Then we'll have our request and our response. Now here's where our authorization is going to come into play, because we don't want a random person just changing people's guild names freely now, do we? So what we're going to do here is make a check. If the request.headers.authorization is not equal to authorization, then we're going to return the status code of 401, which means unauthorized. And then we'll also want a message with that, and we'll just simply say unauthorized. If they pass that check, then they've got your authorization key as we defined in our config file, in which case we can then validate if the guild even exists. So this.client.guilds.cache.get request.params.id. If there's no guild, then we want to return the status code of 404, which is not found, and with the message guild not found. So that's our first check. Now we want to make sure a name is provided, so if there's no request.body.name, we're going to return the res status of 404 again, with a message no guild name provided, like so. Now another check we can do, if request.body.name.length is above 32 characters, which is the maximum amount of characters you can have for a guild name, we'll return a status code of 400 for bad request, in which we can then send a message saying guild name exceeds 32 characters, like so. And now we can check if it has permissions. So if guild.me.permissions.has manage guild, so the inverse operator there being used, will return res.status 401 since we are unauthorized. So message cannot manage guild, like so. And now we can actually change the name, so guild.setName, request.body.name, and then we could return the res status of 201, and we'd simply want to send back the request.body. And that's our post request endpoint made. So now we're going to go back to our api.ts that we made earlier, and we're going to go ahead and import a Cairo client from Discord to Cairo. We're going to import Express application from Express. We want to import create server from HTTP, which should already be installed. Then we want to import calls from calls, and then import guild router from routers/guild router, like so, which is the class we just made. Now we're going to create another class, so export default class API. We're going to have two properties. We're going to have client, which is going to be in a Cairo client, and then we're going to have server, which is going to be an Express application. Then we can create our public constructor method, which is going to take a client, which is in a Cairo client. Then we can do this.client equals client like we did in the last class. Now we want to create a public function called start, which is just going to return a void. This.server will equal express as a function. This.server.use, which should take express.json, like so. This.server.use, and we're going to have calls, origin, which should be set to true, and credentials, which should be set to true, like so. Now we want to create a new instance of our guild router, which is going to take this.server and this.client, like so. And that'll start listening to our API endpoints. And then finally, we can create server, which should be this.server. Then we can listen on port 8888. And then we can have a function which will return void, and we'll just console.log API is online, like so. And that's our API file. And now one more thing before we test. We need to open up our ready event in our listeners, ready listener. We're going to import API from our API folder. And then we want to simply create a new API, and that's going to take this.client, and then we use start. And now we're ready to test our API. So I'm going to be using some software called, well, first we're going to use the browser for the GET request, but for the POST request we're going to use a software called Postman, which I'll show you in a minute. So let's cd into our server folder, compile the bot using TSC. This will take a sec, there we go. And now we're going to run node dist/bot.js. So as you can see, API is online and the bot's online. So let's go to the browser for the GET request. Okay, so now we're on the browser for the GET request. We are going to navigate to HTTP, then put in your server IP or local host, and then put in your port number, /v1/get/guild, and then just put in an invalid ID for now. So as you can see, it's responded with a message saying guild not found. Now I'm going to get a valid guild ID, so 1 second. So here's my valid guild ID, and as you can see, that has returned Voltrex development and it shows the owner and the members. So now we're going to create a POST request. So we're going to open up a software called Postman. So 1 moment. So here we are on Postman. So we're going to change the request to a POST request, and we're going to put in our URL again, and then we're going to do /v1/post/guild name, and then we're putting an invalid guild ID at first. So we have our parameters, and we're going to have our authorization. No, we want our headers, and within here we're going to have authorization. Oh whoops, don't want proxy authorization, just want authorization. And then we're going to have a value which is our secret password, like so. And now we want a body in which we are going to be using JSON. Now JSON looks like this, as you probably know, and we're going to have a name right here, testing. And now if I click send, we have a response saying the guild is not found. So we need to put in a valid guild ID. So let me get the ID again. So I've put in a valid ID now, sending a request. It says cannot manage guild. Now I'm going to give the bot permissions to manage the guild. Okay, so the bot has permissions now, so if I send a request once again, it's returned the body back. So now we go to Discord. As you can see, the name of the guild is now testing, and if I go into the audit logs, let me disable streamer mode. As you can see, it's set the server name to testing. So that worked. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.